Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today for a webinar about Avenza Maps and what three words. We released Avenza Maps 3.9 last month, and this is a great time now to share with you new features that we've been doing, and one of them is what three words and how it's been integrated into the app. There's been many examples of how organizations are already using what three words, but now that it's live in Avenza Maps, we hope that it's going to inspire you to do something similar and show how what three words is really useful in that. Just before we start, I just kind of want to let you know we're going to be recording this webinar. So don't worry if we're going a little too fast or if you miss something. We're going to post this webinar on our Big Marker channel after we're done. And you can, after that, you'll receive an email when it's published live so that you can rewatch it, or you can share it with colleagues that were planning on watching it, or friends that you might think it's interesting. Feel free to ask questions in the chat or the QA panel. The QA panel is just, it's kind of grayed out a little bit, but if you click that, you can start asking questions if you have any. And in the chat, we'll monitor some of the questions, and we'll stop a few moments throughout the webinar to answer any of these questions that may arise, and we can take questions as well towards the end. In today's webinar, we're going to go over a few topics. Brief introduction of Avenza Maps and the what three words partnership and how we're aligned. An introduction into what three words and its many uses. Discussion and examples of how what three words is integrated into the app. And a little bit of introduction into some of the use cases and examples of what three words being used right now in industries like emergency response and safety, as well as like recreation and travel. We have a few presenters today with us. Myself, Michael Law, I'm a marketing manager with Avenza Systems. I've been with the Avenza team for almost 10 years now. So I've seen the growth of the app and some of our desktop apps out there in the GIS and cartography space. And it's, it's a really exciting time now with a lot of new partnerships and the trends that are going on in our industry. And part of building Avenza Maps as well is to kind of focus on a lot of these key areas where we're trying to help our users work with the mapping and location and GIS space. So we also have Jane Stevenson. She's a partner marketing lead at what three words, and she works with travel, emergency, and automotive partners there. We also have James Cochran. He's a partnerships manager at what three words, and he helps people work across national infrastructure and emergency services. And lastly, we have Bob Parry. He's a business development associate. He's been working with and helping create features in the Avenza Maps app for a number of years now. And he also develops partnerships that complement the platform. And he's worked with many map publishers. So believe it or not, Avenza Maps is actually coming up on its 10-year anniversary later this summer. I've personally seen it grow from the very beginning, so I'm actually really happy to see how far it's come along. We've worked with many organizations around the world to really try and focus on making sure the features we develop are useful for our users. We've worked with a lot of government organizations, including the U.S. Forest Service, and I know a lot of our audience right now who are listening, they're part of that organization or have worked in relation to that organization. We've worked with a lot of like emergency response teams. We've worked with teams that are also city, municipal governments, and even nonprofit organizations and organizations that are more recreational based. New York, New Jersey Trails is one of our map publishers, and they have hundreds of maps available to their members, and we work with them to make sure that they have the availability of all the features in our app. And we've also worked with other map publishers, including National Geographic, HEMA Maps down in, they do Australian maps, and most recently Michelin Maps to offer more city-based maps on your devices. But we're also partnering right now with a lot of other key businesses. We are aligning with, for example, right in this webinar, what3words. And we thought that it was a really natural fit between the two companies based on three key areas, which is location, ease of use, and safety. It's always great to know where you are, using the app. And, it's been a ride to definitely try and make the app easier to use. And, a lot of the maps that are out there, we've been trying to get really great map publishers involved and trying to make safety as well one of the key priorities. A little bit more about where we're going with these partnerships is we're trying to get these. Sorry, back up a bit. Yeah, we're trying to get the partnerships available to really focus in on the usability in the app and to try and expand places where the app hasn't reached before. And this is part of why we're going in that way. So I'll let Jane take it from here.
Thanks, Michael. So hi, I'm Jane. I am, as Michael said, I'm partner marketing lead at what3words. So that essentially means I work with all the partners that we kind of work with at what3words and help them talk about, the benefits and how it works within other systems. I'm not sure how many of you have heard of what3words before, but what we're going to do is I'll take you through a bit of a explanation about what the system is, how it works, answer some kind of key questions about what3words itself, give you a bit of an intro to some of the partners we work with, and then James, my colleague, will later dive a bit more into detail about some of the use cases, and I think some that will be really most relevant to you guys who are interested in using it within Avenza Maps. So firstly, a bit of an intro to what3words. So what3words is a very simple way to talk about precise locations, and why we exist is probably quite a useful thing to start with. And we exist because much of the world is quite poorly addressed, and actually having a easily communicable address is a very useful thing in daily life, and often large parts of the world don't have one of those. So this can be beautiful areas like this, big rural areas, national parks, those kind of things. Kind of roads or back kind of country roads, and things that maybe you'd know about but you wouldn't know how to describe to someone else. So if you had to tell someone exactly how to find that road, pretty difficult to do in an easy way. This also is the case for long stretches of highway. Often there's one road name or one kind of code for that road. Very difficult to talk about precise places along it. You might have some kilometer markers or some mile markers on there, but really difficult to go, I'm at this precise spot and this is the address for that. Coasts and beaches suffer from the same problem. Often a beach has one name or one kind of term for its long stretch of coastline that can be kilometers, miles long. And so talking about specific places on that, if you want to meet someone there, or if you want to kind of be able to describe a precise point where, an animal needs help or you need help, really difficult to do. Forests are another one, pretty disorientating when you're in them, but also very hard to describe a specific tree, a specific area, in a very simple way. So how do you basically talk about those kind of locations? This can also happen in areas, you know, places change from season to season, landmarks can change and it can be difficult to describe. So having a consistent communicable way, difficult to do in spots like this. And this is also the case for often buildings and things that maybe do have an address as well, a traditional address. So, you know, Walnut Farm, for example, there may be multiple walnut farms in the same region. This might be the address for this kind of large area of land. But if you're trying to find that specific building, sometimes that's quite difficult to do. Or if I'm that farmer and I want to talk about, you know, a specific point on my land, like I need this fence post fixing and I want someone to be able to find it. Again, something that maybe doesn't have its own address. There's also problems with addressing, which are kind of modern problems. So this is an area in Halifax in Canada, and it's not a huge area, but within that space, there are 6 or 7 maple drives or maple walks. And if you're a tourist or someone who maybe doesn't know the area that well, it's pretty easy to get confused, and maybe someone's trying to direct you to someone that needs help, and actually that confusion can cost kind of precious time and sort of can make things very inefficient. There's also often issues with traditional addresses like this, which are that people have kind of colloquial or kind of casual names for places, or a road name has been updated. So Park Road, which used to be Brandy Lane, which might then be something else. Or, you know, there's kind of things that require a bit of local knowledge, that Warrington Gardens, this is just around the corner from our office in London, where, you know, you might live at 7 on Warrington Gardens, but actually number 7 is in Warwick Avenue and number 8's in Formosa Street. And if you're the postman trying to find that spot, that's a lot of time of your day you're wandering around some streets. And then the other issue is kind of, you know, if you type an address into Google Maps, like College Farm, that pin's going to drop on wherever the kind of pin has been designated, but it's just one spot. And actually the college farm that you needed is a bit further up the road. So if you're the person who owns that property and you're trying to direct someone to it, your experience day to day is probably someone calls you up and you go, okay, well, you're going to see College Farm on the left, and then just drive a little bit further down the road, and then I'm right at the bottom. And that's just not the best experience for anyone. And, you know, multiple buildings, often this is the case on kind of large rural properties and also around kind of urban areas as well, is you've got one address, 7 different buildings, and actually it's not quite adequate to explain that. And this is an example of a hospital where you've got maybe 6 or 7 entrances, and you want to make sure that someone reaches the right spot. You know, each of these entrances, it's hard to describe individually when you've only got one address. So I think everyone should now be familiar with some of the problems with traditional addressing or poorly addressed areas. There are some solutions to address this. One is digital pins, so maybe a WhatsApp pin if anyone uses those, or a Google pin, and they are great if they work and can be very efficient computer to computer, but often it's not possible. Sometimes you have to be in the space to share that pin. Sometimes you want to take a pin from your desktop computer and put it on your phone, and that's pretty difficult to do. So they're not kind of universal. Also, there are these things which we love, coordinates, but they weren't really designed for humans. So they are great if you're a computer trying to process that as a kind of alphanumeric code. But if I'm someone that wants to remember that or write it down or pass it on, it can be quite a difficult thing to do. And if you get 1 or 2 digits the wrong way around, you've got a bit of a problem and you're kind of a mile or 100 meters in the wrong direction. So that's where we come in. So what3words is essentially a system that was designed to have the accuracy of GPS coordinates with the simplicity of words. And so actually where it came from was our founder, Chris, used to work in music industry, and he was trying to give lots of musicians and people who needed to bring equipment to fields and spots for gigs. He was trying to give them GPS coordinates and they kept getting them wrong or not being able to use them. And he went, okay, there must be a system that I can design that uses something that's a bit more human friendly, like words instead. So there was born what3words, which is basically a grid laid over the whole planet of 3 by 3 meter squares. That's about 10 foot by 10 foot. And each one has been labeled with a unique combination of 3 words. So gazed, across, like is 3 words for that square. And that's the only square on the planet that has that 3-word address. So 57 trillion squares, each with their own unique 3-word address. And what that means is that that tree in the field, so you can kind of see the grid in this image. And if you want to talk about the square that exact tree is in, you suddenly have a way to do that. So that tree now has an address. So ground ripe closed is the 3 by 3 meter or the 10 by 10 foot square that tree is in. Or if you're kind of out in the outback, maybe trying to meet someone in this kind of environment, and you open up our app, you can go, I'm at Fillings, Illusionist, Leaks, and you know exactly the 3 meter square that you're in. Or in kind of a big rural area, if you need to describe a precise point, you can say stating leader's gift, and that is the precise 3 meter square. So if you're trying to report something like a kind of fire in open country or a bushfire, that can be a really useful way to be precise about where that is. Or if you're back to that kind of farm example that I was explaining before, you've now got an address for every single gate or building or outbuilding. You can talk about each one really precisely. So this kind of square describes the exact entrance of that gate. It's also quite useful for traveling. So if you're someone that likes to kind of go off in the caravan and you've got your favorite spots, you can now kind of remember and save where they are in a really easy way. So just write down the 3 words or save it, and you can find that spot again or share it with friends. And that kind of long stretch of road that we were talking about before, you are able to talk about somewhere very precisely on it. So if there's a road accident, or you maybe want to meet someone or pause on the side of the road, you can go, I'm at Strikes, Stormy, Overriding, and you're now talking about a very specific spot on that road rather than, you know, somewhere off junction 5 or halfway along. So we have done this in 43 languages to date. So what3words is basically available in all of those languages. And how we do that is we have mapped the world 43 times. So essentially, these are not direct translations of each other because it doesn't always work. But what they are is that every square has essentially 43 different 3-word addresses, and you can basically navigate the world in your native language. We've also done kind of smart things within our system to avoid kind of human errors. We're all human and we make mistakes. So we've basically designed the system to kind of assess and correct as many of those as possible. So you're not getting that issue that you get with coordinates where maybe if you get a couple of digits wrong, you end up a little bit off rather than a lot off. So what we've done is basically put very similar sounding 3-word addresses on opposite sides of the planet. So if you're given an address that is table, chair, lamps, and you mishear that and type table, chair, lamp, then you will know that actually you were going, you know, to the East Coast of America or New York. You weren't going to Australia. So it's very easy to spot mistakes. And our app actually suggests the 3 words that are nearest to you. So if you were on the East Coast, it would suggest, oh, we think you mean table, chair, lamps. So it's much easier to kind of spot mistakes. And so how you can interact with our system is in a number of ways. So the first way is basically through our app or map site, and this is totally free. So this is called what3words. It's an app that you can find on the App Store. And essentially what it allows you to do is discover, search, and kind of share 3-word addresses. So you can open up the app, find the 3 words for where you are right now. You can kind of type in 3-word addresses, search them. So a way to kind of discover and share. But what makes the system really effective and what we love most is that it's really simple to build into other kind of products and partners. So this is exactly kind of why we're here. So we are used essentially by lots of businesses and organizations worldwide in kind of broadly 3 buckets of ways that this works. So one is people who kind of share what3words addresses, using them just like an address, but much, much more precisely. So maybe that's travel guides talking about where to find a statue or a entrance to a ruins or an entrance to a hotel. Maybe that's people that accept or use 3-word addresses within the system, like Avenza Maps, and we'll go into that later. Or there's a number of kind of cars and automotive partners that we work with where you can enter 3 words into the navigation system, and that vehicle will be able to navigate to that exact 3-meter square. And then there are a number of organizations, and this is, again, on the slide is a bit of a tip of the iceberg, who use us day to day. So try to put in some sort of relevant, useful ones here, which might mirror some businesses out there. So people like G4S, who are a security company, use it at kind of events to coordinate staff, make sure that people know what points they're supposed to meet at or where that gate is that you're supposed to be manning. UK power networks use it to kind of manage assets. So if you found a fallen power line, you can describe exactly where that is. We're used now by around 80% of UK emergency services, so that you can call up as a member of the public, report your 3 words for where your incident is taking place, and police, fire, ambulance can find you. Forestry England, who use it to kind of manage teams and resources around forests in the UK, and kind of Network Rail and people like that who are using it, again, along kind of railway lines or spaces to kind of manage between teams. And I think the big benefit for often all of these people is just the simplicity and the ease of communication. So having a consistent and simple way to talk about precise locations that can be passed easily from team to team and from system to system. So this a kind of snapshot of a few of what it looks like in practice, just to give you a bit of a picture. So this is the Mongolia guidebook, and essentially it's listed as like 3 words just under the normal listing. So you've got kind of the web address and what it is, and then you just go seeping, expanding, defensively, and then someone can find the precise entrance. Or, you know, guest houses or travel accommodations, just list it just under a normal address. So if you want to find the entrance, our 3-word address is showdown, gratifying, adjusted. And then this is how it looks in a Mercedes-Benz. So if you are lucky enough to have one, you can get in and say, "Hi, Mercedes, navigate to Sunroof Mall Jingles," and it will accept that as an address, and you can navigate directly to that square. And we are in Avenza Maps now. So this is a good point to just pass over to Bob, who's just going to explain a bit about how the integration into Avenza Maps works.
Great. Thank you, Jane. So yeah, I'm just going to talk about how it works in Avenza Maps right now and how you can start using it in the future. So it is in Avenza Maps 3.9, which came out in early March. So if you have Avenza Maps on your phone, you probably already have Avenza Maps 3.9. Your phone should just auto-update the app. If it hasn't, you can just go to the App Store or the Google Play Store and just run the update, and you'll be able to access it right now. So how does it work? Well, on every single map in the entire app, you'll be able to see your what3words location. So that's any map that you import from any source. So whether it's any source that you brought it from, any format you brought it into as, it'll be able to see your location, whether you imported it today or 7 years ago. Whenever you brought that map in, it'll work just fine. And same with Map Store maps as well. Whether it was a map you bought or you got for free, or you got today, or again 10 years ago even, it'll work on all of those maps. And the great thing as well is that it works completely offline. So you don't need network, you don't need your internet connection. So whether you are, in the city right now at home with fantastic internet, or if you're like me in the middle of the woods with terrible internet, or you're somewhere that has no internet at all whatsoever, you'll still be able to see your location with what3words. So I'm just going to dive into the exact features you'll see it in and how you can start using it. We will have a question period at the end of all this. So if you have questions about exactly how something works, or if it's not working quite the way you want it to, or if you have suggestions about how you'd like to see this improved upon in the future with different workflows, let us know, and we'll address those all at the end. So the first one is the coordinates bar. So I don't know if you guys have your phone in front of you, you can kind of just follow along a little bit. But if you're looking at any single map in Avenza Maps, right at the bottom, you should see a coordinates bar. That coordinates bar right now will probably just have your lat long on there. But if you tap on that little button, so you'll kind of see a blue highlighted section with your lat long. If you tap on that, you can pick from any of our coordinate systems. So we have various formats of lat longs. We have eastings and northings. But about halfway down that list, you'll see what3words. It should just show you, roughly the 3 words where your crosshair is right now. If you tap on that, Avenza Maps will basically switch into what3words as its coordinate system. So as you pan around the map, you'll see the what3words for that exact spot. You can tap on your current location and kind of see the what3words for where you are right now. If you want, you can just type those into the chat and we can kind of see where everyone's what3words are. Yeah, fun, interactive ability. But yeah, you can see, what3words are for everywhere you want to go. No matter what map you're on, you'll be able to see the what3words right where you are. Another cool thing, if you're on iOS devices, let's say you have, you found your what3words and you're in a certain location and you want to show that to a friend. You can actually just long tap the coordinates at the bottom and it'll prompt you to copy to your clipboard. And you can send that through any sort of text message or an email or WhatsApp, whichever you want to do. You can tell your friends, oh, I'm exactly at these 3 words right here, or meet at these 3 words. Just an easy way of getting the 3 words to your friends. Other places you can see it are in the place marks. So this goes for any place mark that you've made in the past or any place mark you've made in the future. You're able to see the location of the 3 words for every single place mark. So when you make a new place mark, that metadata page will pop up asking you to put some information in there. You'll see the location there. And again, you can open any place mark from the past and just see the location right there as well. And you can make changes here too. So if you made a place mark at a certain what3words and you want to just change it to a different what3words, you can just tap on that and adjust it. Another cool thing is you can do find by coordinates. So let's say, in the last one we showed that you could easily copy your what3words onto your clipboard and send it to a friend or a colleague. You can actually get those 3 words and paste them in here to that find by coordinates tool and see where the location is. So from Avenza Maps on any map view, at the bottom right, you should see a little toolbar icon. If you tap on that, all of the tools we have will be available. One of them is find by coordinates, so you can just paste in or type out any set of words, and it'll find those 3 words on your map. One limitation here, just to keep in mind, is that it's only going to look for locations on the map you have right now. So if your friend is in Mongolia and you're looking at a map of Pennsylvania, you're not going to be able to see the location because it's not on your map. So make sure you're looking at either a big enough map or a specific enough location. So one thing you might find is as you were, let's say a friend yesterday, instead of texting the location, they just told you their location. And you're going to meet them somewhere in Toronto the next day, and they told you, hey, it's at Surging Feathers Puff. So you, the next day, go to Avenza Maps, put in the find by coordinates, type in Surge's Feathers Pull, because that's what you thought it was. And just as Jane was saying, it has a whole really smart system of figuring out, oh, actually, you probably mean this. So as you're typing out Surging Feathers Pull, it's going to say, oh, you might actually mean Surging Feathers Puff, because that's way closer to you. And it's probably what you're really thinking about. And you can just tap on that. It'll automatically complete to the correct location. And when you press OK, it'll move your crosshair right to that location. And then from there, you can make a new place mark, or you can use your navigation tools or any of the various features that we have to get you to that location. So that's the gist of how Avenza Maps has what3words going on inside of it. So again, you can ask any questions afterwards, but I'm going to pass it on to James, who's going to talk a little bit about the various workflows and ideas you can use with what3words.
Thanks, Bob. So yes, I will be going into a little bit more detail on some of the specific use cases that you might find for the new what3words integration into Avenza. As Bob mentioned, there'll be time for a few specific questions at the end, so feel free to let us know in the chat box if you've got specific questions, but hopefully I can address some of those as I take you through. So to start with, I think the first and potentially most obviously immediate use case that might be relevant here for the audience that we're speaking to is the work that we have been doing with the emergency services. Obviously, when you're thinking about an emergency situation, it's critical that you're able to communicate precise location as easily and clearly as possible. Obviously, in an emergency situation, it's quite easy to make a mistake. And as Bob and Jane mentioned, the what3words integration allows you to error correct if a mistake is made, and hopefully guarantee that you'll always end up in the right place. So to give you a bit more context on the emergency services use case flow, we started this work about just under 2 years ago in the UK, being a British company. As Jane mentioned, we are now working with around 80% of the UK emergency services. That's across police, fire, ambulance, Coast Guard, and mountain rescue. So what that means in practice is if you call 999, those call handlers in the control rooms can receive a 3-word address from the caller. They can enter that into their command and control software and dispatch officers or the relevant units to the incident. One really important thing here, and one really interesting learning from our perspective, has been how useful what3words has been in coordinating multi-agency responses. As Jane mentioned, sometimes it can be a challenge to communicate a location between different organizations that might be operating on different systems. Having a 3-word address lends itself very nicely to that ease of communication. So as I mentioned, we started this work about 2 years ago. We're working with 80% of the services in the UK, but as a result of the success that we've seen in the UK, this has been growing quite significantly over the last few months, and we're now having serious conversations in Canada, the US, Germany, Australia, and a few other countries around the world who have seen the success of what3words being implemented in command and control rooms in the UK. And what this has led to is some great stories, as you can see on the screen here. This is being used almost on a daily basis by those forces that have implemented what3words now. And as you can see from some of the stories, there's been some really exciting and positive outcomes, particularly when you're thinking about operations that happen in hard to describe places, mountain rescue search operations, as you can see on the bottom left there. That was actually a group of tourists who travelled up from Glasgow to Ben Nevis and got lost without any real equipment, and they were able to communicate their location using what3words to the local mountain rescue team, who were able to find them just before a quite significant blizzard hit the mountain. So obviously in these situations, you can see how valuable it is to communicate that location as easily as possible. The second use case that I wanted to go into a little bit more detail on is off the back of the emergency services work. A growing area for us as a business is working with infrastructure partners. So obviously that covers a whole range of different organizations, whether it's city and municipal governments, utilities, construction companies, forestry commission, and national parks. Essentially any organization that is operating in a part of the country that is hard to describe because it's particularly rural, or if you're operating along a road or rail network, which might be hundreds of miles or kilometers long and very difficult to describe an exact location along that route. So some of the ways that these sorts of organizations are using what3words is through integrating what3words into their own systems to identify assets. So if you are a local government, for example, you can now map every single lamppost, park bench, pothole, access point, or gate can now be found very easily and very quickly by teams using a 3-word address. This can also be quickly shared with emergency responders in the event of an emergency, obviously. And as Jane mentioned, what's really significant here is finding a common language for these organizations to communicate with each other as easily as possible. Another way that we've seen quite a lot of uptake in the UK and growing around the world is through using what3words in physical reference points, whether that is identifiers on assets or in physical signage in depots and temporary offices in rural areas. There's two ways that this can be used. The first is for health and safety. When you think about if you're operating in an office or depot, for instance, that might be in a place that's hard to describe, and the zip code or postcode might not get you to the right place. If you're incorporating a 3-word address into any physical signage on that site, in the event of an emergency, it makes it very easy for the person calling 911 or 999 to communicate the exact location for the emergency responders to come to. The other way that this signage can be used is for internal asset management. If you have any faults or issues along a network, whether that is a water network, electricity network, or transport network, as I mentioned, these assets can often be hard to describe. They may well have a lat long, which you can provide, but 3 words may well be easier to communicate between teams when you're talking over the radio or over the phone. And finally, aside from the slightly more commercial uses, what3words is now being taken up by rural communities across the UK and around the world. As you can see on the left-hand side, there's a few examples of various national parks who have started incorporating 3-word addresses to identify trailheads, waypoints, or particularly interesting points of interest around a walking route. This can all be done within the Avenza integration as well, so you can mark locations with a what3words address and navigate to it very easily. So that's really it from me. As I mentioned, I'm sure there'll be a few questions. I've seen a few coming through the chat on the right-hand side, so very happy to answer them now. If it would be useful after the webinar finishes, I'm also very happy to be contacted directly. Maybe, Michael, we can arrange to send out my contact details, and if anyone wants to discuss any of these use cases in a bit more detail, I'd be very happy to do so.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for your presentation. Yeah, we definitely do have a few questions. Some of them were in the chat, but I moved them into the Q&A panel. Everybody can click the Q&A tab up top to go into that panel to look. So let's kind of start off from the top. Daniel has a question. What effect did integrating what3words have on Avenza Systems requirements and memory and storage use? Bob, can you answer that one?
Yeah, really nothing. The app size probably went up a tiny amount, but we do a really great job of compressing everything and making sure there aren't any changes. So you really shouldn't see the app being any larger. If you have a limited storage space on your device, you don't have to worry at all. This is not going to make the app bigger, and it shouldn't change your app usage. It's still going to be as smooth and amazing as always. So it really, nothing but positive here.
Great. We have a question from Rowan. Has anyone tried using what3words with aviation, particularly using the compass function for a go-to? I believe that's probably part of one of the navigation features. Right now, I would say we haven't found anyone with that particular usage on our side. Jane and James, has anybody that you know of using it for aviation?
So we do in emergency services. We are used across a number of kind of helicopter air ambulances for guiding in. Often the process that happens is either a combination of the 3words being received on the ground, passed digitally from the control center to whatever system the the kind of helicopter is using. And then we've also been integrated in a system called Airbox, which is used by a lot of aviation partners. And I think, yeah, we've had some sort of anecdotal use of people reporting sightings from the air with the app and kind of using that as a way to kind of communicate over radio a kind of precise location, which is actually sometimes a bit easier to just say 3 words than 8 or 16 coordinates. James, I don't know if you have any more examples. But
Not hugely. I think you touched on most of them there. The only one that I would add is that we are being used by the National Police Air Service in the UK. So yes, they are using what3words. I don't know the extent to which they're using the compass function to then navigate in. But yes, exactly. It's very much being used to navigate teams in, and especially for those cross-organization operations where you need to communicate from land to sea, or to from air to land as well.
Great, thank you. We have a question from John. It says, we use SAR Topo for planning and ops. Any discussions with that organization on incorporating what3words? On the Avenza Maps side, we have been in touch with, SAR Topo, CalTopo in the past. One of our team members, Trent Stromberg, I believe he's on here listening right now. He's in touch with CalTopo over there. There previously has been discussions about a potential partnership there. We're still in chat with them, so not right now. I don't know if we're doing what3words incorporation with them, but at a what3words level, perhaps Jane and James can reach out to them, and potentially there could be something there. Does it work in Google Earth?
So we're not currently native within Google Earth, but there is a really cool Google Chrome plugin that you can get, which is called Maps with what3words. So if you like a Google Chrome plugin, you can just search for that, and what it allows you to do is on Google Maps, you can just discover the same things that you would discover with coordinates. You can just find 3-word addresses and search them and use it as if it's native. So yeah, working on, ideally would love to be in Google Maps, but at the moment that's the best way, and it's a really cool integration if you give it a go.
Great. We have another question from Vivos. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. It says, this looks amazing. Are there any thoughts of having even smaller squares in the future to be able to work on the detail? Maybe 3 words and then a number from 1 to 9 for each sub-square. So having more detail, I guess, is the question here.
It's a really interesting question, because I think there was a lot of debate with Chris, our founder, and the team when they first started as to how small you should go and how many words. So I think we're definitely team words. I don't think we would start using numbers, just because we find that that's kind of we're what3words, and we think that they're easiest to communicate. And I guess getting to 3 square meters or 10 by 10 foot was actually, we felt like that was the optimum size of square of precision that people would reasonably want to communicate, that is the most useful, paired with obviously the more, as you kind of alluded to, the more precise you go, the more numbers or words you need. So 3 is also handily the most memorable combination. So I think we picked it for being optimal. So at the moment, no plans to go into more detail, but good to know what those things that you might want to use it for would be, and then we can kind of consider.
Yeah, when we were in the Avenza office, we were getting a demo of when it was being integrated into the app, and one of our teammates, Justin, was he showed us a what3words kind of layout of our own office, and essentially everybody was sitting at their desk, and they're like, "Oh, this is my what3words at my own desk." We have another question from Robert. He's saying, will the program convert the location from one language to another? For example, if you're using English language and are given a Spanish 3-word address, will it convert it to an English address? Bob or Jane? Yeah, either or.
I'll answer on behalf of, I guess, the what3words app, and then maybe Bob can answer on the Maps front. But yeah, so in what3words, so how it works is the what3words app will download into the language that your phone or your device is set in. So that will be your kind of core language, and then in the settings you can very easily just change between different languages. In the instance that you are given a 3-word address in another language, basically, I guess 2 or 3 different ways that this can work. If it's a kind of digital version of that address, so it's a link or a kind of, you've clicked it and opened it up in the app, then you can, just really easily switch between the 2 languages. And then if it's something that's written down or you are using in our app, we have a kind of scan feature. So you can just scan those words, which will then recognize it with optical character recognition, and then it kind of changes it in the app. But or you can kind of type it in and switch it. But yeah, so basically there is a function to switch between languages in the app.
Bob, do you want to relate to anything to that?
So I'm actually not 100% certain if it works with different languages in our app. I know if my device is set to English and show the words show in English. I'm not actually sure right now if I switch it to French, if it'll be in French, for example. But I can test that while we answer some more questions, and I will let you guys know in the coming minutes. Hang on.
Lauren has a question. How well does it work in areas with lots of buildings that may block satellites? Based on how what3words is set up, definitely in the app, it's actually offline. You can use when you're on your map and you're browsing around and panning around the map. It's actually all offline. You can turn off the signals, so it will actually show you your what3words as well as actually any coordinates. You can obviously use your GPS signals, but it's all there available for you. So there's no real downside if there's a blockage of the satellite signal. The only part there would be potentially if you want to tap on the GPS arrow to pick up your signal inside a particular building. That might block it a little bit, but you can still pan around on the map and still find your what3words and your coordinates. Daniel has a question. How will we know when local emergency services in America can accept what3words?
So the way that this normally works is so we work behind the scenes with the emergency service to kind of get their control room trained and make sure that it's kind of rolled out within the service itself. And then what tends to happen is the service will announce to the general public, we are now happy to receive what3words for a location. So either through social media or through press. So that's kind of how it's rolled out in the UK and other markets. And we also have tended to host on our what3words site, like a list of accepting emergency services. I would say many of them sort of informally know about it and use it. So often if you're literally at a loss for any other way to describe your location and you would like to give a 3-word address, we've had many instances where people have done that without an official announcement by that service. I know particularly in California, that's happened quite a lot, where maybe we have a bit more awareness. But yeah, normally it comes via the emergency service themselves going, yeah, we're ready.
Great. We have a question from Troy. Is there a correlation between words and locations? Is there a way to look up at grids that I'm in 1 mile away from that location?
So the 3-word addresses themselves are meaningless. So they are random. The words are generated through an algorithm. So there's any kind of relation from a location to its words are kind of purely coincidental. There are some fun combinations out there. But yes, you can look at all the 3-word addresses are already assigned to the squares on the planet. So the app and in Avenza Maps, you can kind of move around, scroll around the map, and you can continue to discover 3 words for each of those spaces. In the what3words app, you can type traditional street names or places into the search bar, where you can also put 3 words, and then you can kind of scroll around, switch to satellite view, and kind of look at words for the squares when you're not in that location. So yes is the answer to that.
Great.
And just one other thing as well for that within Avenza Maps is, as I was saying with that find by coordinates feature, you can just type in any word or any combination of words, into Avenza Maps, and it will bring you on the world map or on whichever map you're on to that actual location. And you can use our navigation feature to get the, as a crow flies, distance and direction and how long it would take you to get to that point as well. So you can just type in 3 words, make a place mark there, and then use navigation to say, okay, that would take me 20 minutes walking, or that's 2 miles away, and I'll get there in so and so time with the speed I'm going at. And then one other thing, just to go back to that question about the languages, I just tested it here, and it does change based on the device language. So if you set your whole device to French, for example, the what3words will appear in French. Like mine in front of me now says "Trou sage patir vignon." So it does certainly change into the French language or whichever language you choose to use. And that will be the same for any place mark you have, or viewing it on the map. You'll be able to just basically switch easily from language to language. Or we can move on to the next question now as well. So how do you make it so fast? That's a lot of records to search. I think it's referring to the total number of words, but in Avenza Maps, that's just a processing speed. So you can basically just search, and it's got, I guess, trillions of words to look for, but it's just the same as any coordinate system we're looking for as well. It can just find that spot anywhere in the world and pull it up instantly.
Just to add to that from the what3word side as well, the reason why it can be done so quickly using the what3words tech is that what3words itself is not based on a database of addresses. So unlike a traditional address database where you would be searching all 57 trillion squares in the world to find that exact result, what3words technology is based on an algorithm and a word list. You need 40,000 words to cover the whole world in English, and a short bit of code that assigns those words based on the set of rules that Jane explained, namely shuffling similar sounding words as far away from each other as possible and optimizing those languages for the countries that it's spoken in the most. So that's what makes it so fast.
Great. Yeah, and I guess in the app too, it works similar. So it's very fast. Like Bob was saying, as you're searching, it will auto populate. It'll auto populate as you're searching, so it'll find something really quickly. Another question down here. From Timothy, any chance of an Excel sheet or website with formula and 3 alphabetical drop-down menus so someone at a computer can select the 3 words and have the lat long pop up? Thinking someone could say the 3 words over the radio to dispatch this. Jane or James, any answer to this one?
Jump in on that one.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is very possible. We appreciate that a lot of organizations potentially on the call will be used to using lat long and other coordinate systems, and will have big databases, whether in an Excel or otherwise, with those coordinate systems. So we do have plugins available that allow you to do exactly that. Just to answer 2 questions in one, I can see the question about using it within Esri, ArcMap, or ArcGIS as well. So we have a plugin for for Excel, which allows you to do exactly what Timothy's described, where you can convert a whole column of lat long into 3-word addresses and vice versa, so that whoever is using that data can use whichever coordinate system they're more happy to use. Similarly, we also have a plugin available for Esri within ArcGIS, so you can plug that in straight to your interface and use what3words to search within ArcGIS straight away as well.
Great. There's also another question about integration with Global Mapper. Is that available, if you know?
So not currently. It's not one that I'm aware of, but would be very happy to look into. So yes, not currently.
Okay, and there's one more question. We'll do this as the last question. Is there a possibility of creating poems with what3words that form a line? For example, can a footpath have its own what3words poem? That would actually be kind of fun.
Yeah, Jane, is that one for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, go for it. We definitely we have a lot. Like, I think actually at the same time as we're doing this webinar, we're doing one for school kids, because what3words tends to be something that sparks people's creative imaginations, and we've had people do, you know, find 3 words for a path and then write a poem about those 3 words, or kind of find ones that are poetic in themselves. So yeah, for sure. Like, it's really nice to kind of sort of get inspired by the combinations that crop up. So would love to hear them. We do share them with us on social. We love to hear your poems.
That would be amazing. I just wanted to thank Jane and James from what3words for joining us. Again, if we're going to be sending out a recording if you've registered for this webinar, so you can watch it again. I'll try and add some contact information in that email as well. So if you have any questions for Jane and James specifically, you can email them directly. If you have any questions for Avenza Maps, the Avenza team, you can send us an email at marketingteam@avenza.com. I'll be there to answer those. And I just wanted to thank everyone for attending, and we hope you are all safe at home and your families are all keeping safe during these times. And thank you very much. And we'll post up these links on social media so that you can also watch them there. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, James.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, take care.